Well, it's been a long road, but we're finally at the video that talks about one of my favorite backyard poker games. Stay tuned to learn how to play it. Welcome back, everybody, to Backyard Poker, the channel dedicated to expanding your poker palette beyond just Texas Hold'em. This is part 6 of my Poker Basics series, which will explain how to play 7-Card Stud. This game introduces a new twist to the game of poker, the ability to use 7 cards to create a 5-card poker hand, similar to Texas Hold'em. The difference is, in 7-Card Stud, everyone has their own 7 cards to work with. 7-Card Stud is the next logical step after 5-Card Stud, which I explained in the previous Poker Basics series. If you're brand new to poker, I suggest watching parts 2, 3, and 5 of this Poker Basics series. That will give you a full understanding of the hand ranks, dealing, betting, and stud-type games. For Texas Hold'em players familiar with the hand ranks, you can skip part 2. 7-Card Stud is probably the most diverse game, with endless variations. The way that it's played online and in casino tournaments is slightly different than this home dealer's choice version, aka backyard poker, that I'll be showing here. 7-Card Stud, like its cousin 5-Card Stud, is another open-style game, which means that some of the cards will be revealed to all the players. While 5-Card Stud uses a 1-down, 4-up deal configuration, meaning the first card is dealt face down and the remaining 4 are dealt face up, 7-Card Stud uses a 2-down, 4-up, and 1-down deal configuration. That means there'll be 2 cards down, 4 cards up, and the last card down. Both 5 and 7-Card Stud use the non-positional bet determination, based on the highest hand showing among the players. 7-Card Stud uses the same tiebreaker rules as in 5-Card Stud. You can also use the same rule for doubling the bet when a pair or better is showing on the table. Check out my previous Poker Basics video on 5-Card Stud to learn more information. Now let's learn how to play 7-Card Stud step by step. Be sure to stick around to the end of the video where I'll reveal a helpful worksheet that will help you with these and future poker games you may want to learn and play. I'll now show how to play the traditional version of 7-Card Stud, also known as straight 7. That just means there's no wild cards used. Wild cards will be discussed in the next part of this Poker Basics series. I will assume by now that everyone knows that every backyard poker game begins with a shuffle, ante, and offer of the cut to the dealer's right, so I won't list those. I also won't list the last step of gathering the cards and passing them to the left for the next game. Here is the 15 steps involved in traditional 7-Card Stud, otherwise known as straight 7, with emphasis on the items unique to stud poker games. Step 1, the dealer announces the game. Straight 7, everyone. Step 2, the dealer deals out 2 cards face down to everyone. This is first and second street, which is just the first 2 cards dealt out. Step 3, the dealer deals out 1 card face up to each player, and this is 3rd street. Step 4, the player with the highest poker hand showing starts the betting. And we will use the rule that the highest first hand showing will actually open the betting. This first 10 is the highest hand showing, so player 1 opens the betting. We'll keep the betting simple, and this player will just open for a quarter. All the other players will call. And that completes steps 4 and 5. And I'll just combine steps 4 and 5 for the rest of the betting items on the list. Step 6, the dealer deals out 1 more card face up to each player, and this is 4th street. And step 7, the person with the highest up card poker hand starts the betting. In this case, player 1 with the 10-9, which beats the 10-4 of player 2, opens the betting. Player 1 decides to open for a quarter, and everyone calls. Step 8, the dealer deals out another face-up card. This is 5th Street. And now the player with the highest poker hand showing is player 2 with the pair of 4s. Now that a pair is actually showing on the table, player 2 could open for up to 50 cents. He'll just open for a quarter, and everyone else will call the bet. That completes step 9, and we move on to step 10. Step 10, we deal out another face card, face up, and this is 6th Street. Now, as you can see, the bet opener has changed to player 3 because player 3 has a pair of 8s, which beats player 2's pair of 4s. So player 3 will open for a quarter, and everyone else will call. And that completes step 11. Step 12, the dealer deals out one more card face down. This is 7th Street, or sometimes called the river, just like in Texas Hold'em. And since no new face-up cards were dealt, the same player, player 3 with the pair of 8s, would open the betting. Player 3 opens for a quarter, and everyone else calls. That completes step 13, and now we move to step 14, which is the showdown. Each player reveals their cards to determine who wins the poker game. So in 7-card stud, you use 5 of the 7 cards to make your best poker hand. For player 1, we have a straight, 9, 10, Jack, Queen, King. Player 2 only has a pair of 4s, almost a flush, almost a straight, but only a pair of 4s is player 2's highest hand. Player 3, whoa! Player 3 has 4-of-a-kind 8s, which is a very high hand for 7-card stud and nothing wild. And then finally the dealer, player 4, has a flush in spades, ace high. But this flush is not enough to beat player's 3 4-of-a-kind 8s, so step 15, player 3 wins the pot and rakes in the money. And as with any poker game, all the cards are gathered up. The cards are moved to the player on the left to start a new poker game. Let's look at some 7-card stud betting strategies. Just like 5-card stud, you may see even more checking done in a 7-card stud game than you would in 5-card stud. That's because there's 5 betting rounds in 7-card stud instead of 4 in 5-card stud. Sometimes you can have more than one betting round be all checks. It's important to keep track of how the other players are betting in relation to what cards are showing. A player that consistently raises is either bluffing or just has a good hand. If you're the one with a good hand, especially early, don't raise too much or you'll end up having more people folding than if you just called the bets. Another key strategy is to try and memorize the cards that were folded by other players to have an idea of what cards are left in the deck. This may be important for other players' hands and your hand if you're targeting a specific card. Now let's talk about an important house rule. Although I'll be covering house rules and poker etiquette in depth in part 10 of this Poker Basics series, there is one rule that's important to mention now. And that is the idea that the cards do the talking. Or you may hear the term cards speak.
What you talking about, Willis?
Let's remember that backyard poker is a low-stakes social game and should not take itself too seriously. When you start getting into games that involve more than 5 cards, there's a possibility of not always recognizing the highest poker rank in your hand. This is especially true with games using wild cards, but that will be discussed in the next Poker Basics video. For some higher stakes games or professional tournaments, there may be a requirement of a player to declare their poker hand rank during the showdown. If the player actually has a higher poker hand than what's declared, he is bound to that lower hand rank. Most poker games in general have a cards speak or cards do the talking rule, where the declaration of the player is not bound to the actual cards and the actual card hand rank is used to determine the winner. Let's take a look at an example here on the table. At first glance, someone may think that the highest poker hand they have is the trip threes, or three-of-a-kind threes, when in actuality, this person's highest poker hand rank is a straight, which is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The cards speak rule is that this player actually has a straight despite the fact that they declared 3-of-a-kind. You might be thinking to yourself, 5-card draw, 5-card stud, 7-card stud, endless variations. How am I going to keep track of all these games? Have no fear, my friends. I will provide a helpful worksheet that will have all of the step-by-step instructions for each of the poker games explained so far. I will also leave a blank worksheet that you can freely use and print out to fill in your own poker games. Let's take a quick look at this worksheet that I'm providing. I'll show the 7-card stud worksheet. So at the top, you'll see the game name, whether this is a stud, draw, or other type of game, the number of players that this should be played with, the player card count, how many cards each player gets, the number of community cards that will be dealt out, in this case 0. Community cards will be discussed more in part 9 of my Poker Basics series. And then if any wild cards are used, and in straight 7 there is no wild cards. And then there's split pot, which will determine if more than one player split the pot. In this case there is no split pot, but split pot will be discussed more in part 8 of this Poker Basics series. And then a redeal, if there's anything that triggers the redealing of cards, and in this case that also isn't being used. Then I have an area to add a description of the particular card game. In this case, traditional 7-card stud, nothing wild. And then below that is the section on game steps, which describes every step of this card game. If there happen to be variations on the card game, they would be listed below, where it says variations. And then I left a large area where you can add your own notes and any variations that you may come up with. Now on to the question of the day. What is your favorite 7-card stud variation? List it in the comments below. Give some instructions on how to play it. I may use it in a future video when I start to talk about poker variants. The next part in the Poker Basics series, part 7, will talk about the use of wild cards and wild card games. This little twist can have big effects on your poker games and really spice up your poker nights. If you enjoyed this video, click the like button. If you're enjoying this series, click on the subscribe button. If you want to know when new videos come on board, click the bell icon. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. At first glance, somebody may think that this 3-of-a-kind threes is the highest poker hand. But if you look more carefully, this player actually has not a straight. Jesus Christ.